Do you have an occasional flutter at the races? Buy lottery tickets? Have a night here and there at the pokies or the casino? Then you are one of the 70% of Australians who spend nearly $20 billion per year on gambling. But if you're lying to loved ones, spending more than your budget allows, or simply can't stop, you may be a problem gambler with a more serious clinical addiction. Hi, I'm Sally Ann and I'm a clinical psychologist, wife and mother of 4. None of us get through our lives without experiencing some type of loss or hardship, but it is what we do with that pain that really matters. This show gives Aussies the opportunity to share their stories, get their message out and inspire others across our wonderful country. Bill had a problem with sports betting for 50 years until he turned his life around 4 years ago. So thanks for joining us on the Sally Ann Show, Bill. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Sally Ann.
So how old were you then when you started gambling?
I was 17, so you can almost work out my age, can't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so how did that start? What happened at 17?
First job, first week, first pay, first bet.
Wow.
Does that work out?
Yeah. Yes,
My first pay packet.
Did you spend it all? Or?
No, only a little bit of it. But that started. That's the very first time I actually had a what you would call, well, a bet at the races. I don't think I was entitled to bet at that age, 17. It might have been 18, but anyway, that's what started. And from then on, it got quickly worse. I was interested in the horse racing in the years before.
Okay.
But
you were too young, I guess.
Yes,
would have been the issue.
I made imaginary bets, before that.
Yeah. And did you win on the imaginary bets and also on the first bet that you did?
No, it lost.
Okay.
But I remember it like it was yesterday, where I was and how I felt. I had an adrenaline rush when the horses came into the straight that I've never had again since.
Yeah. Were you there? Were you actually at the races?
I was at the races at Caulfield at the top of the straight, and when they came around the corner, the jockeys were yelling and the hooves of the horses and the whips were cracking, and suddenly the crowd, in those days it was quite big crowds at the races, and it sort of became a crescendo and it really all came together, and with the colours of the jackets of the jockeys, and it just got me.
It was a real buzz.
It was something I'd never experienced before.
Yeah. So when did it become a problem, or was it a problem from the start, or when do you think that it became
looking
a problem?
back on it, the problem started probably. But then I had a period. I then started being interested in the races and going to the races on a Saturday, and it went on, and then probably for 12 years, from the age of 17 till 29, I was gambling only on the horses. Okay. I'd have a few wins, but when you're younger, when you start at 17, you get low wages. I was paying rent, smoking, having a drink. There was hardly anything left. It was a battle.
Yeah.
But
so you just used what you could afford at that point in time?
Yes.
Yeah.
But
and so something happened. So for 50 years, that was sort of the path that you travelled.
Yeah, but it changed the path.
Yeah.
Until that period, until I was 29, I was I went to rehabilitation.
Okay. Yeah. For the gambling.
Yes, I was homeless, jobless, and broke.
Yep.
And I'd heard of some place in Preston. I didn't know what to do. I wanted to keep it to myself.
Yeah.
So there was a mental health place in Preston, and they put me up there, living, and I had group therapy for 6 months there.
Right.
And taking more interest in other people's problem than my own.
Yeah.
And then I'd had enough, and I wanted to get back in the world, more or less.
Yep.
And I got a job in a flat quite quickly. Those times it was not hard to get a job.
Yeah, not like it was, not like it is these days.
So that was the pay packet problem.
Yeah.
Oh, you could get.
Yeah.
Within a month of having a job, I started gambling again.
Wow.
So
So it didn't.
the 6
nothing
months
really changed.
rehabilitation
Yeah, it
really
was-
didn't have a great effect on me. I think
Yeah.
I just had a rest.
Yeah. So something happened 4 years ago though, because you were doing it for so long. You even went and got help, which is awesome, but it obviously wasn't the right help, or it didn't work for you. And you obviously hadn't made the decision to finish with the gambling at that point. You got back into the real world, started gambling again. But something must have happened 4 years ago. What changed
Well,
for
can
you?
we perhaps just go back to that period of time that I went back into the workforce? By this stage I was 30.
Yep.
I worked for 8 years. I started winning on a consistent basis
Right.
to such an extent that I threw the job in after 8 years.
Wow.
And I went full-time gambling.
Wow.
And I started winning more and more.
And
And
then you
that
were
went
hooked.
on
Yeah.
for maybe 20 years, 25 years.
Yep. So you were
Whatever it
hooked.
was, I was reasonably sharp with figures and memory and that sort of thing. Suddenly
Yeah.
it changed.
Yep.
I think it was probably because I put more effort in this was only horse racing,
Yep.
in studying the form.
Yep.
And that went on and on and on. Now we're getting towards the 90s. Poker machines came in, started playing them, and then later on the casinos. I was doing the three things in the one day.
Wow.
The horses during the day and the poker machines late afternoon, early evening, and then the casino
Or
after
into the
that.
night time. So really, gambling was entirely your life.
Hardly
It was
anything
your life.
else, you know.
So yeah. So what did happen 4 years ago then? What made you change?
There was a bereavement and my partner died suddenly.
Yep. Yep.
Got a unit in Spring Street in the city,
Yeah. Yeah.
shut the curtains, and
Yeah.
off I went.
Yeah.
I used to go to the races, but now I could bet from home.
Yeah.
And I was still doing the pokies and I was doing the casino betting.
Yeah. What are you doing? What have you been doing in the last 4 years since
Okay,
then?
so I'll briefly say that at one stage I thought, gee, I'm losing a lot of money here. How much have I got left?
Yeah.
And I had $20,000 left. I was living in Spring Street in a nice flat
Yeah.
unit apartment.
Yeah.
I thought, I've got a problem here. What am I going to do? I'm still lively. I can do things.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I think this is about the end of it. So I went to a counsellor. And the counsellor then advised me, maybe this particular group, Chrysalis Insight, might be something where they're getting all gamblers together, something in common to see whether we could help each other.
Yeah.
It took a little while. I
Yep.
had one little relapse,
Yep.
and that was...
Here you are. Yeah.
and then for the last 3 or 4 years, I've been a volunteer, and now I'm giving speeches here, there, and whatnot.
And you mentioned earlier that your life has just changed for the better.
I found myself.
Yeah.
I didn't realise, and this I think applies to everybody,
Yep.
and especially to people with addictive thing, there is something in us
Yeah.
that when you discover it, because it happened one day like some spiritual whatever,
Yeah.
I suddenly felt a whole different person, like what something happened.
Yeah. Wow.
And from that point on, that's 3 years ago, I'm as happy as Larry.
That's great. Thank you so much. We're going to have to leave it at that.
Okay.
Thank you so much, though,
That's
Bill.
all
I
right,
really
Celine.
appreciate
Yeah.
you sharing your story.
Okay.
So after the break, we're going to talk to a woman whose partner was a problem gambler. You won't want to miss this.
I don't have a problem, there's nothing wrong, it's just a bit of fun.
Yeah. Lauren found out that her partner, Matt, had a gambling problem. Fortunately, Matt agreed to get some help, and the two of them now share their story to help others. Here is some footage from the Victorian Responsible Gambling Foundation.
I first met Matt 6 years ago through a girlfriend who used to go and watch his local footy at Chelsea Footy Club.
Didn't leave her alone for about 4 hours, so I thought she would have hated me, but she actually found that to be really nice.
Went on a few dates and went from there.
So it was my persistence, like I do on a footy field, that sort of won her over.
Early dating, we were definitely still in that party zone, so going out a lot, so it was all fun times. I realised Matt's gambling probably the first 6 months of our relationship, when we were going to the pub every Saturday night or Sunday, and he was putting little bets on, and then it started to kind of escalate.
I'd say a lot of things to her to get that money, whether it be I'm making up that I'm got a massive fine to pay, or, you know, it was always a white light.
I think he borrowed close to $6,000 over two or 3 years. She'd
watch me start playing and then she'd always say, hey, that's enough, let's go. And I was pretty arrogant back in those days, so I'd just be persistent, go, no, just 50 more, just 100 more.
I would, yeah, I'd get very emotional and cry and stress and not realise, or I'd just try and work out why he was like this and why he would push me away when I'd be trying to support him and get him out of this rut.
Still to this day, I don't understand how she hung around.
The first time I confronted Matt about his gambling, I just said, why? Why is there an issue, and why do you feel that you need to spend all your money and to play these games?
If any other normal person probably would have walked out the door and said, stuff ya.
I could see that we were going to have a future, and I was up for the challenge of that long road ahead, trying to help Matt.
Gambling has certainly started to take its toll.
A girlfriend of mine's mother does some market research. She actually called me saying that she'd had a Gamblers Help research that was going on, the 100-day challenge, and called Matt straight away. He went for an interview and he was chosen, and it was the best opportunity that he could have ever taken.
What it involved was a camera at our homes. I had mine in my bedroom, and we were just 4 people that was going to come out to the world and let everyone know that we had a problem with gambling, that we'd come to that realisation and we wanted it to stop.
Saw a massive change over the 100-day challenge. At the start he was quite low, but he just became a totally different person. His whole outcome on money and savings.
If you can notice any of the warning signs going the wrong way in their life, the best thing you can do is not accuse them, is just to be there for them.
It scares me a little bit knowing that if I left where he would be, I assume that he'd be still doing the same thing and he'd still be in that rut. But I'm very proud of myself and of Matt and everyone that's helped us with the support to be where we are today, to be having a house and for all the goals that Matt's achieved.
So thanks so much for being part of this show, Lauren. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. So tell me, when did you first realise that Matt had a gambling problem?
Probably within the first 4 to 6 months of our relationship, just going down to the local pub. Yeah. And then noticed it.
Yeah. So, well, actually, what did you notice? What did you notice when he went down to the local pub?
Just wasn't just having the one gamble. It was, you know, several gambles, several bets, and just blowing way too much money. It wasn't just $5, it turned into $500.
Yeah. So were you going with him? Like, did you know what he was doing, or?
I would go down for dinner and then he'd say, oh, I'm just going to put, you know, $50 in the pokies, and then it would just get worse and worse and worse. So.
Okay. Was that, so that's right from the start of the relationship?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do you know if there were, I guess he said, or did you know if there were any warning signs for someone who has a gambling problem? Do you know what to look for, or is it really just the, you know, the amount of time that they spend at places?
I think the amount of time. So it started just from a casual, you know, going down on a Saturday. Then I realised it was during the week all the time. So that was the warning signs of, oh, I've got to be home a little bit later. And then I started to pick it up that
that
he was going.
More.
Yeah, there was a bit more to it.
Okay. So how did that affect your relationship then?
Very, very stressful, very hard, because it was all the lying and lying to me all the time. No, I'm going to be at work, or I'm going to be here, and it was just very hard. A lot of anxiety.
Yeah. So what you're saying, in the beginning, he took you with him,
and then wouldn't be doing it on his own.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll meet up with you later, and stories like that.
Yeah. And with the lying, so it's what about the money? Like, did you notice, were you two living together, or did you?
No, we're still living at our parents' house.
Okay. Yeah.
But it would be, you know, I've just been paid. 2 days later, I don't have any money. I need money for bills. And then it just started escalating from there. It was the constant, I need money from you, I need money for this, I need money for that.
Okay, and then it sort of, you worked out that there was obviously something going on.
Yeah, because there was no proof of him paying bills or anything like that. But I actually called him down at the pub, so.
Oh, so you didn't know that he was there, and then did you go on purpose?
I had a vibe. Yeah, I just had my gut feeling. I thought, I bet he's at the pub, and
you were right.
Saw his car, and there he was.
So what did he say? How did that
go?
Yeah.
Shock horror.
I imagine he'd have a heart attack.
Yeah, he did. He was like, what are you doing here? And I was like, what are you doing here? And then it just, what happened.
That's interesting. Was he angry at you for being there? Was he like surprised?
Oh, I think he was more angry. Yeah, more angry.
Isn't that interesting?
what are you doing here? Like, you shouldn't be coming here to watch me or to snoop on me. And I said, no, I just knew that there was something going on.
Yeah.
And I was right.
And you were right, exactly. So what advice would you offer? Because, you know, being a partner, it is really hard because, you know, the money's going, he's borrowing money from you. What advice would you give someone who is, you know,
Going
with,
through the same thing. Yeah, just to support them, to sit down and have a chat. I just sat down with him and just asked him why. Like, is there a reason why? You know, are there stresses? But just to support them, and just to get help as well.
Was it a new thing for him? Had he just started?
No, he'd been gambling since he was 17, 18.
Okay.
So a very long time.
Yes. Was it always pokies or was it anything different? Do you know?
Pokies and the horses. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there was a bit of both there at different times.
Loved a bit of both.
Yeah. So what made you stay? Like, because a lot of people don't. You know, some people decide
I think I wanted to help him. I think he just looked helpless, and you know, I didn't want him to be in this rut forever.
Yeah.
So I wanted to help him through.
Yeah.
8 years later.
Oh, 8 years later.
Yes.
So how long did it take for him to, you know, from you going out to you realising that he had a problem? Was like when you caught him, how long was that?
Oh, I think 3 years, 3.5 years.
3 years.
Just denied the whole problem. I don't have a problem. There's nothing wrong. It's just a bit of fun.
Yeah. And what changed then? So after, obviously he was caught.
Yes.
But then what happened? Because he didn't just suddenly, you know, one of the things that I know and we'll talk about later in the show is that you can't just say, oh well, I'm done, then I won't gamble anymore.
Yeah, no, it wasn't as simple as that.
Yeah,
but
what happened?
So a girlfriend's mum does some market research
Yeah.
and called me up and said they're looking for 5 people to do a 100-day challenge.
Okay. What's the 100-day challenge?
To stop gambling. So 100 days of video diaries and see how they go.
Okay.
To stop gambling altogether. So he knew that it was, you know, we were getting more serious into the relationship. And wanted to prove to himself and his family and myself that he could do it.
So there was no help with that? They didn't?
They did offer some gamblers help.
Yeah.
And he did have some counselling as well. So throughout the whole 100-day challenge, he had the counselling and the gamblers help. Which was massive for him.
Yeah.
Very supportive.
I've actually seen part of his clip, to be honest.
Yeah.
Tell me, there was a change in his demeanour from the beginning of the 100-day challenge to the end. Was there?
Yeah,
is that something that you noticed?
Totally different. We were getting along more, and his vibe and his personality, and he was just a lot more happy within himself. He had money to save, and
he could actually
a car.
Did he? Yeah.
We could actually go out for dinner. So
Yay. And you didn't have to pay.
No.
That's awesome. Yeah,
it's good.
Because that's the thing, I guess, is that he would have been feeling bad at different times and lying. I mean, no one likes to lie to their loved ones.
Yeah.
So
it's very hard.
Yeah.
I was forking out a lot of money.
Yeah, I bet you were too, and then he could save up for a car.
Exactly.
Look, thank you so much,
No
Lauren,
worries.
for being part of the show. I really appreciate you sharing your story and Matt's story as well.
Hopefully it will definitely help.
Yeah, thank you. So after the break, we'll have an expert in the studio to talk to us about getting help for problem gamblers. Stay tuned.
Heal from addiction, and that's I think a really important message to get out, that you can recover. And
Jodi Clarke is a clinical psychologist who's been employed as a community educator and therapeutic counsellor for over 15 years at Gamblers Help City. She works with anyone affected, family members, friends or co-workers, and she finds that these people are an interesting client group from all walks of life who often present with complex needs. And Jodi also wants us to know that she has a supportive husband and 2 wonderful children. So welcome, Jodi. Thanks for being on the show. Yeah. So what do you think attracts people to gambling? Why do you think that happens?
Well, it's entertainment. It's a social outing for some people.
Yeah.
For other people, it's an escape from problems.
Yeah.
So lots of different reasons.
Yeah, and colours. I know that they often casinos employ.
That's right.
Yeah.
Spend a lot of money on research to design really attractive, interesting
lights
machines
and colours. And also
That's
keep the
right.
place dark too, so people don't know whether it's daylight or nighttime.
Yes.
So with the gambling, how does it often affect family members? So family members clearly are, you know, it might be money or whatever, but what's the results? Why do they come to see you?
Because they are, you know, they've been shocked, or they've realised they can't pay the groceries, or if they have dealing with a sense of betrayal and they're not coping very well with those feelings, so they come and get help with us, which is private and confidential service. So.
Well, actually, then we'll ask the other question.
Yeah.
Why do the gamblers come to see you?
Well, usually because they feel like they just can't understand this problem, or they can't get back control of their gambling. And
it must be, I imagine that sometimes their family members would probably send them, do they? Is that what happens? Or?
Sometimes, but it's much better if they bring themselves in terms of like motivation and ability to change. But
look, one of the things that Bill said earlier was that his life absolutely changed after he, gave up gambling. So, what we heard in between the takes was that he said that it was like a chrysalis, that he actually he changed from being this person who was a gambler for 50 years to someone who started really enjoying his life after that. Is that a common thing, or is that...
People do heal from addiction, and that's, I think, a really important message to get out, that you can recover, and, it might not take as long as people think. Sometimes I think that people feel hopeless, and that keeps them in that destructive cycle. But if you get help, even a small amount of focus help can make a really big difference for people. So it's really worthwhile.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what is the treatment then for gambling? What do people do to get help?
Well, gambling is now formally recognised as an addictive behaviour. It's the only sort of addictive behaviour now that's formally recognised as an addiction. But so we use a lot of the models from the addictive area, so stages of change and
so making sure that they're ready.
Well, stages of change is so looking at where they are in terms of their in terms of change, whether they're still in denial or starting to think about the problem, or whether they've reached a decision to change and they're setting goals, or whether they've already put those goals in place and they're sort of in more of a maintenance phase. But the other part of that cycle, which is very common, is lapse or relapse. So when people come to us, we often normalise that and validate them, and so they don't feel like they're failing or
because that's the thing, isn't it? You don't want them to think, I've tried to give up this gambling and obviously I've gone back to it, so I'm a failure, because then they'll just stop and give up the treatment or give up the process. So,
that's right. So it's important to give lots of encouragement and to sort of get some small goals achieved and get them feeling a bit more stronger about life.
And how about the partners and the co-workers as well, or whomever, the friends? Are they supportive in the process usually? Or?
Often I think people, by the time they come to our service, there's a lot of destruction and distrust going on with other family members. But one of the new initiatives of our service is, what we're trying to encourage now is families to come in, and that's really powerful, because you can get a lot of work done in and maximise your efforts in terms of supporting the gambler, or educating the family about gambling.
Because one of the things I know, I don't deal with gambling, but typically in my practice, but one of the things that I have up on my wall in my office is therapy takes place between the sessions, and really what you're saying is that people can come for counselling, learn what they need to learn, be educated, but then you have the family who goes home and supports between.
That's right, because often what happens is that the relationships are very jeopardised or broken. So that's a big part of the work, to rebuild those. So if you've got the family coming in the first instance, and you can work with everybody, you can already have a support network in place, which is a really big bonus.
Because that's one of the things that Lauren said earlier, was that, it was the lying. It was the, saying he was at one place, but, lying and actually being somewhere else. So, look, thank you so much for being part of this show, Jodi. I've really appreciated it. And thank you for letting all of us know a little bit more about, how to get help for gambling. So if you're worried about your friend and family member, or if you're lying to loved ones about your spending, please seek some help from a professional. Thanks again for watching the Sally Ann Show. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did, and we want your feedback. So contact us on our Facebook page and Instagram, or follow me on Twitter.